especially glad to be here in Washington Square Park. I wanted to give this speech right here, and not because of the arch behind me or the president that this square is named for. Nope, we are not here today because of famous arches or famous men. In fact, we're not here because of men at all. We're here because of some hard-working women. Women who more than 100 years ago worked long hours in a brown 10-story building just a block that way. Women who worked at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. So here's what I want you to hear. It was March 25th, 1911. It was a Saturday. And at about 4:45 in the afternoon, people walking through this very park looked up and saw black smoke billowing into the sky. A fire had started in that building. And inside that building, on the top 3 floors, deadly flames leapt from a bin to the oily floors and from the floors to the walls, sweeping across workrooms and trapping the workers, fighting for their lives. Women, girls really, some as young as 14, raced to escape, but the exit doors were locked. Others ran to the windows, waving their arms and screaming for help. No help was coming. The fire department's ladders could only reach to the 6th floor. The flames leapt higher, and women started crawling out onto the ledges. And as people on the ground stood in shocked silence, a woman jumped, and then another, and then another. They hit the ground with a sickening thud. They died on impact, so many so fast that the women's bodies piled up on the sidewalk. Their blood ran into the gutters. Dozens more were trapped inside. Trapped because the door to the staircase was locked. Locked by bosses afraid that the workers might steal scraps of cloth. Firefighters would later find a pile of burned bodies next to that locked door. It took 18 minutes for 146 people to die. Mostly women, mostly immigrants, Jewish and Italian, mostly people who made as little as $5 a week to get their shot at the American dream. It was one of the worst industrial disasters in American history. One of the worst, but it should not have been a surprise. For years, across the city, women factory workers and their allies had been sounding the alarm about dangerous and squalid conditions, fighting for shorter hours and higher pay. They protested, they went on strike, they got coverage in the press. Everyone knew about these problems. But the fat profits were making New York's factory owners rich, and they had no plans to give that up. Instead of changing conditions at the factories, the owners worked their political connections. They made campaign contributions and talked with their friends in the legislature. They greased the state government so thoroughly that nothing changed. Business owners got richer, politicians got more powerful, and working people paid the price. Does any of this sound familiar? Take any big problem we have in America today, and you don't have to dig very deep to see the same system at work. Climate change, gun safety, health care. On the face of it, these 3 are totally different issues. But despite our being the strongest and wealthiest country in the history of the world, our democracy is paralyzed. And why? Because giant corporations have bought off our government. Americans are killed by floods and fires in a rapidly warming planet. Why? Because huge fossil fuel corporations have bought off our government. Americans are killed with unthinkable speed and efficiency in our streets and our stores and our schools. Why? Because the gun industry has bought off our government. Americans are dying because they can't afford to fill prescriptions or pay for treatment. Why? Because health insurance companies and drug companies have bought off our government. Now, Americans disagree on many things, but we don't want each other's homes burned down by wildfires. We don't want each other's children murdered at school. And we don't want each other's families bankrupted by medical bills. What we want is for our government to do something. And yet, our federal government is unable to act, unable to take even the most basic steps to protect the American people. Now, when you see a government that works great for those with money and connections and doesn't work for much of anyone else, that's corruption, plain and simple, and we need to call it out for what it is. Corruption has put our planet at risk. Corruption has broken our economy, and corruption is breaking our democracy. I know what's broken. I've got a plan to fix it. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States.